Hello, everyone, and welcome to the LeanTossup Call of Duty League podcast. This is Major 4, Week 2, so we're basically only 2 weeks away from the Major now at this point. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, CDLMetrics. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Yeah, last weekend's matches, I would say, were interesting results, like across the board. We had some underdogs that won outright. We had some matches that were supposed to be 50-50s, and one team came out on top decisively. And then, yeah, we had some matchups we expected to be blowouts that were pretty close. So we got a little bit of everything last weekend, hoping for another good slate of matches this weekend. But yeah, it's crazy. We're already in the home stretch of things. Yeah, it'll fly by. So I'm just trying to enjoy every moment we have.
Yeah, I mean, we're down to now 20 games left in the regular season. One more Major. Champs, some point in, I think it's June? Champs is in June, I
Probably
think? Early
June, if I
June.
had to guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the World Cup is then in July, so it's we're almost done this. We're very close now. So anyways, models versus markets, the weekly recap here. We did not have a great week on this line here. I had an okay-ish week, not my best week, but an okay week. I got Carolina against Boston. This came up short. This did go to a game 5. That was unfortunate. And then this was just not even close. They got 3-0'd. So that sucked. You also had the same issue here with Thieves. They also did that. You also had went to a game 5. Seattle, I think, didn't win the hard point. FaZe won the hard point, I think. The map won hard point, I think.
No,
Yeah.
so actually that Surge phase series, Surge won both hard points. They could not win map 2, 3, or 5. That was one where we were both on the Surge side for, that we really probably should have had those. And like in my case, it was a -1.5, so it's harder to hit. But if they can get one of map 2 or 3, hard points were pretty decisive. So that one stings. Yeah, obviously we went head-to-head with the Carolina and Boston thing. Did not go my way. Props to you. I really did not see that coming from Carolina. And then, yeah, I went against FaZe again in that final match of the weekend, and they 3-0'd Thieves, a very impressive result. One of those matchups we expected to be close that ended up being over very quickly. Yeah, props to FaZe for a good week. They definitely shot me down on my picks for sure, but hopefully we got some better picks coming this week.
Yeah, moving on to the combined model plays weekly recap. Actually, not that bad. We both had FaZe there. We had Cloud9 moneyline -1.5, map 1, map 2, map 3, and then Carolina moneyline +1.5 there against Boston, and then a bit iffy there, but those were just some map money lines, and then nothing there on Sunday. League news. So this is actually breaking. We're recording this on Tuesday night. This happened just a couple of hours ago. Mercury's in, Skies is out for Optic. Now, this is a bit weird because they actually looked pretty good last week. The thing is, it's funny, right? Because we're like, looks pretty good is like the benchmark now for Optic is, oh, okay, they didn't look horrible. And now, to be fair, they did beat Vancouver, which is arguably top 3 team in the league. Okay. But we're now like, oh wow, this team that won champs last year looked okay, therefore it's good, right? But again, it's interestingly enough that they're making their Skies is out and Mercules is in. Now Mercules looked amazing in Toronto Ultra's run there in Major 3, and now he's going to be a constant player. That's actually pretty cool, and I'm actually excited to see what he does here. What's your thoughts on this as you're seeing this here?
Yeah, this was very interesting. I don't think anyone really expected this, but yeah, just a couple hours ago it was announced. And my initial thoughts are it makes a lot of sense if you're Mercules. It makes some sense if you're Optic. And I think part of the surprise is just I wouldn't expect an organization like Optic to do this, but I think they know where they are in the standings and what their upside is at the moment for winning Major 4 or winning champs. And making a move like this could definitely raise that ceiling for this team. But it is a little odd. I say it's odd because we just saw, last week Optic 3-0'd Surge. Very decisive. Map 1, Map 2, and Map 3 were all blowouts. And this was with Skies in the lineup. And it was the best that they've looked, really, with this current, or now old lineup intact. I was very impressed. And I know Surge they came off a loss the day prior to FaZe, but again, that I'm not going to discount that or overrate that too much for Surge. If they can get a search win on the board, the weekend looks a lot different for them. Their control was a little shaky, so that's maybe a problem. But yeah, if you're Optic Texas, I don't hate it. I think it might take a week to work out, but it maybe not. We saw Mercules come in for Toronto at the major, and their first match didn't go well, but after that, it was pretty smooth sailing up until Sunday afternoon. Yeah, I'm very curious to see how this plays out. This is obviously a huge jump for Mercules. If you get an opportunity to play for an organization like Optic, you have to take it. So I get it in that sense, but I always wonder with these roster moves if it takes some time to get this gelled together. Obviously, Mercules has a little more pressure on his shoulders now, joining an organization like this. I think he's more than capable of putting up some good games and helping this team out in a big way. Yeah, very interested to see how Optic play this weekend. They have 2 matches. They're favored in both of them, which we'll get to in a second. So the market is telling us they probably should win both, if not at least one of those matches coming up. So yeah, very interesting move, and I'm excited. I feel like we haven't had this sort of roster shakeup in a little while now, I guess with Miami Heretics maybe being the last one of note or significance, but yeah, very excited to see Optic.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Champs picture becoming clearer. So technically, Vegas and LAG have not been eliminated from champs, but they basically have been, though. They're not technically eliminated, but although it is 0, there is actually a chance. But they're not mathematically eliminated, but like it would take a pretty strong miracle there. Miami's up to a 99% chance. Boston is 85. Optic is 81. And then it's just a pretty steep drop after that. There's a very clear drop right after that. And a lot came to this, right? Obviously, Vegas got 3-0'd by Cloud9, but then they somehow beat Minnesota. That really hurt Minnesota. That was like the death blow there to Minnesota. Also, Optic 3-0ing Vancouver, and I think they've also beat another team this week as well. That really saved Optic. Like 100% that saved Optic. And that basically alone, that swing of basically 30 points, if not Optic would be at like 190, 195, and Minnesota would be at like 175. That'd be a lot closer. But now you're clear 55 points there. And that's a huge difference there. So that basically locked out Minnesota, and then Cloud9 obviously behind there. Cloud9 losing to Ultra did that as well. So Champ seems pretty fixed. But again, the thing is, it's like we're talking about like the 8th and 9th and 10th teams here. Like these are not even remotely comparable to FaZe, to Thieves, to Ultra, to Surge. Like these are not even, I mean, with the exception obviously Optic that 3-0 Vancouver Surge, they're still a stack above those teams, right? So we're not even talking about, great, you made champs, you get a participation trophy, right? That's what we're doing here, right? So what's your take on this?
Yeah, first of all, if you make champs, you're guaranteed some nice cash at the very least, so it is a big deal just to qualify. I know what you're saying, though, with the 7 and the 8 seed are going to have a heck of an uphill battle in their opening round match, assuming that FaZe and Thieves sit atop the standings at the end of this all. But yeah, I just think, and shout out to Doug, this chart on the right is from him. I think he posted this on Saturday night or maybe Sunday morning, so I don't know if it's 100% up to date with the matches that happened on Sunday, but it's pretty close at the very least. And a lot of these teams that are in the 8 seed discussion weren't even playing on Sunday. I just think last week was, I feel like, as big of a deal for 1 week of qualifiers as I can remember. Like it all went, almost all of it went right for Optic. Optic was sitting in the 8 seed. They're still in the 8 seed. That we knew that wasn't going to change, but they got their 1 win on the board against a very good team. And that kind of catapults them up into an expected start in the winner's bracket. And for them, that's a big deal. If you can get even just 1 win in round 1 of the major like that, you're guaranteeing some nice CDL points there. And then, yeah, for Vegas to beat Minnesota, that was huge. Now, Minnesota do have a somewhat easy schedule moving forward. It's not easy because they're among the bottom 4 teams in the league, but you have LAG this week. If you're Minnesota, that's one you got to have. You just have to have that. And then you end with Toronto, Carolina, and Vancouver. Toronto and Vancouver might be a little bit tough, but I think you could maybe win one of those. And then Carolina, again, that's going to be a tough fight as well, but winnable, at least more winnable than those other two. So, yeah, if you're Minnesota, you got to have that LAG match this weekend. Beating Toronto would obviously do a lot for you. Cloud9, they got the win over Vegas last weekend. Good for them. That's better than what Minnesota did, but then they come out against a good opponent like Toronto and lose. They end with FaZe, Heretics, and Thieves. So that is brutal. You could probably beat Heretics, but asking them to beat FaZe or Thieves is tough. So, yeah, I don't know where we were a week ago, but I'd say Optic is in a much better position already just with that one win they got on the board. Their schedule from here on out is relatively easy. Boston, Carolina, LAG, and Toronto. Ideally, you can split at the very least those 4 games and end up 3-2. But yeah, we'll have to just wait and see how these things shake out. But if you're an Optic fan, last week was very good for you. They're not a lock by any means, but they're in a very good position here for the rest of the year. Like, they control their own destiny. We talk about that a lot with NFL teams trying to make the playoffs. If you're Optic, make winner's bracket, get a top 6 finish at Major 4. That's probably good enough to secure your spot for champs. Yeah, we'll see how it shakes out. Only a few weeks until we have this thing absolutely locked in.
Yeah, just a little bit longer on that. So, Major 4 qualifier expected win, so this is after the full week here. According to your modeling, you have Optic with the 4 seed. So basically winner bracket and the hosting of, technically, I guess they get a small boost by being the 4 seed versus the 5 seed. But that's against Thieves. Good luck. Good luck on that one. Again, Thieves, weird week going 0-2 to Miami and Atlanta. Now, that being said, those are 2 of the better teams. Maybe a little bit of a hangover. Again, it's literally just days after you won the major. So maybe a bit of a hangover there. Same as Carolina. Sorry, not Carolina. Vancouver, they went 0-2 as well. No, they just have the 1 game. No, they had the 2 games. That's right. They had FaZe, again, one of the tougher teams than Optic. I know people might be like, oh, the teams that went 1-2 in the last major went 0-4 this week. Okay, yeah, but both of them played FaZe. So
Yeah.
I would not, I'd hold the brakes on that. I think FaZe and Thieves and Vink and Surge are going to be just fine. But FaZe, in basically looking to potentially go undefeated in the bracket. Toronto could be very competitive for doing that as well. Miami, Texas looks like they're going to have a couple more wins left possibly. Vegas and Cloud9, they got wins, but we're not expecting much more from that. And then Boston in there as well. I got to say, for mine, I love this. It's like Vegas gets 1 win, but that's it. The bottle's, no, you're not. You're done. That's it. You get a 10th of a win. You have a 10% chance of winning any more games. FaZe, though, up there. I actually have, interestingly enough, I have Miami and Toronto flipped, which I think is very interesting. I think it's going to be interesting to see which one is better in that case. I think that'd be a fascinating one to see. But again, I'm agreeing with Optic 4 seed, FaZe, Thieves the 5 seed, Vancouver, Carolina mixing out here, and then I've got Minnesota just edging out LAG. You've got Minnesota edging out Boston. My model really hates Boston. We'll have to see if that's correct or not. We'll know later. Anyways, moving on to the match previews, which just came out a couple hours ago. Like, literally just hours ago. We don't have any hard point or thing spreads. Match 1, Friday, Miami versus Vegas. Miami minus 500 on the money line. Vegas plus 333. Miami minus 1.5, minus 188. Vegas plus 1.5, plus 137. Heretics minus 225 in the hard point and the search, and then minus 400 in the control. So, looking at this again, it's really funny because we were on Cloud9 there against Vegas in the first game. We were like Cloud9 all the way, and I had everything. I think I had the Cloud9 hardpoint spread, Cloud9 search spread, and then just like the money line, the minus 1.5, because I think it was like basically even. It was like minus 125, like an insane price. Cloud9 destroyed them, not even close. So I'm like, all right. They had their flash in the pan moment. They're clearly on the downtrend, so we full send Minnesota against them. They beat out Minnesota 3-2. The question, is that because Minnesota is just really bad? Like, this is the thing, right? Is it Minnesota was like, we have to win this game, we have to win this game, we have to win this game, and they got in their head? Because there was ways that could have been, I think, because Minnesota was up, what, 2-0, I think? Or
Just
what
one
was it?
zero. So
They
so
were up.
Minnesota Vegas last week. Fascinating matchup. Yeah, you mentioned it. So the last match on Friday was Cloud9 beating Vegas very easily 3-0. The map one was close. The control went to around 5, but like for the most part Cloud9 controlled that series throughout. First match on Saturday, Vegas returns against Rocker 100-point club them in map 1, and they beat them by 50 in map 4. So the hard points, which with this Vegas Falcons team, hardpoint has been their bread and butter. They've been very shaky in search and control. So Minnesota wins pretty easily in both of them, but then Vegas get a round 10 win, a round 4 win in control, and then a round 11 in game 5. What's new for Minnesota? You go to a game 5, you go to a round 11, you don't win it. That's what Rocker does. I don't think they're a good team, but I think that series proves that like Minnesota and Vegas are on the same tier at the very least. And to me, that tier is those teams are probably like the 9th or 10th best teams in the league, somewhere in that range. Yeah, if you're Rocker, like this, it's brutal. That was a huge loss for Rocker in terms of competing for champs, even competing for a winner's bracket start at Major 4. They're not dead in that aspect at all. They only played that one match last weekend, but yeah, like you got to come through and search. You can't drop a control in round 4 to Vegas. That hurts pretty bad. So yeah, it's really tricky for this Rocker team. But enough about Rocker. We'll touch on them in a bit. As far as this match goes, like I think it's a good spot to take Miami right now. Their matches were also pretty interesting. They played Thieves on Saturday, beat them in a game 5, round 11. So they weaseled their way through, but they split the hard points at the very least, and both were blowouts. So you can say they squared up with Thieves in hard points. They split them. They took both searches. Control did not go their way, but that Thieves just beat everybody in control. So Miami did exactly what they had to do to beat Thieves. So I don't want to overrate it too much because we saw what Thieves did on Sunday against FaZe. So maybe just a bad weekend for Thieves, but still, beating Thieves in any aspect, impressive. Then Miami come out on Sunday and barely get by LAG. They drop both hard points and come through in search control and search game 5. Pretty decisive search maps. Map 1 could have gone their way as well. A little interesting that you take both LA teams to the brink and beat them both, but obviously much different in terms of skill level for those two teams. But yeah, I just think I trust Miami a lot. I really do. I think Miami are, I'd say, safely in the top 4, maybe top 5 if you want, if you're a little more bearish on them, at least right now. And Vegas, I think, again, squarely like 9th, 10th, 11th in the league. And yeah, I don't know. I just trust this new Miami team a lot. I wouldn't hate even taking like Miami minus 2.5 at a really juicy number. I think, if anything, Vegas scares me a little in the hard point, but yeah, I have so much trust in Miami from what they've done with this new lineup. And I don't know. I don't want to overrate that Vegas win against Rocker too much. I think their series against Cloud9 is a little more indicative of like where they're actually at. So yeah, all Miami for me in this spot.
Yeah, that minus 1.5 is a little tempting there, I've got to say. So, yeah. Friday match 2, Boston versus Optic, a favorite, minus 175. Boston plus 125 on the money line. Optic minus 1.5 plus 125. Boston plus 1.5 minus 175. Optic minus 150 in the hard point, minus 138 in the search, and then minus 163 in the control. My model, and again, this is obviously pre-Mercules adjustment, my model absolutely loves Optic here. Just absolutely loves them. I've got them at 70-something-ish% chance to win. And almost 50-50, probably better than 50-50 to cover the minus 1.5. Doesn't love them in the hard point, but really likes them in the search and really likes them in the control. Your model likes Boston a bit. I don't know. I'm going Optic here. What do you think here?
That's fair. My model has this as a coin flip. I think it has Boston 51% to win, but considering what these teams did last week, I totally understand if Optic is a small favorite in this spot. And interestingly enough, yeah, so we were checking these lines earlier today before the Mercules news came out. Optic was minus 150 on the money line, now minus 175. So the market indicating to us early that the Mercules edition probably helps them. And I get it, like I can see that being the case, but I just don't know. I think it could hurt. So to me, I'm just viewing Optic in the same lens I have for the last few weeks, which is a team that is right around the 8th seed. Like, they're league average-ish, and I think Boston are in that same discussion with them. So to me, I'm trusting my model in this spot, saying this is probably close to a coin flip. My model's kind of pointing me in Boston for search and destroy specifically, and it matches the market in hardpoint and control. But again, I think my model is a little slow with the Boston control stuff. Now, they dropped control last week 3-1 to Ravens, who are a quality control team, so maybe Boston coming back down to earth a little bit because they were running really hot in map 3s as of late, which has really boosted them. I don't know. I think, yeah, I would just probably keep this at minus 120 if I was the bookmaker. Maybe shade it slightly to Optic, but I feel like we're starting to get a price that's a bit too high for Optic Texas. So I'll take Boston in this spot. What's new? I love taking Boston Breach, but yeah, I'll trust that it's a coin flip and see where we go from here.
Yeah, I agree with that. Friday, FaZe minus 900 the money line versus Cloud9, which is plus 500 the money line. FaZe minus 2.5 plus 125. Cloud9 plus 2.5 minus 175. FaZe minus 334 in the hard point, minus 250 in the search, and then minus 500 in the control. Yeah, I've got that pretty much in line, maybe a slight value on FaZe minus 2.5. My model also weirdly doesn't believe. Oh, no, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong numbers there. Yeah, my model weirdly likes Cloud9 and Hardpoint. I don't know why my model likes Cloud9 and Hardpoint. I think that's wrong. But other than, and this isn't just a like Cloud9 versus FaZe thing, it just routinely likes Cloud9 in Hardpoints. I don't know why. But anyway, FaZe, it loves FaZe in the search and loves FaZe in the control. So, but it does FaZe in the hardpoint as well. So it actually slightly leans to the minus 2.5. Yours is maybe similar, but maybe a bit different. What do you see here for value-wise in terms of a play here?
Yeah, so I don't see a ton of value either side. This is more of a stay away for me, to be honest. But my model is pointing me in the Cloud9 direction, and I do think I'd prefer that side, if anything. And I hate saying this every week, because every week I go against FaZe, and it either somehow works out or it blows up in my face like it did last week. But, and you mentioned this FaZe hardpoint thing, like, like your model is a little high on Cloud9 map 1, and mine is just above market in that as well. And the big talking point going into last week was, how are FaZe going to look in hardpoint? There's a new map set for that mode specifically. They were very shaky throughout the Major 3 qualifiers, and at Major 3 in those hardpoints, they were really relying on searches and controls to get wins, and they were splitting a lot against teams that aren't that good in hardpoint. And then last week shows up, they lose both hardpoints to Surge, who we know are a good hardpoint team, but ideally, if you're FaZe, you win at least one of those. And then we only got to see one hardpoint against Thieves on that match on Sunday because FaZe just 3-0'd them. So it was an impressive hardpoint win against Thieves. The other two against Surge, not so much. I still think FaZe are that. I don't want to say they're bad at hardpoint, but they didn't show me a lot last week to buy back in on them being like an elite hardpoint team. Cloud9, they split their hardpoints versus Toronto. That's fine. If you're a team like Cloud9, if you're splitting against teams like Toronto, that's A-okay as long as you can get wins in search and control. They won their hardpoint against Vegas Falcons, who we know are an improving hardpoint team. Albeit that was a somewhat close map, but at the end of the day, they got it done. I don't know. I think this series can look a lot like the Toronto Cloud9 series we just saw on Sunday, where Cloud9 maybe come out, get that map 1 win, and then after that, it's a little tough to get on the board again. So I get the price of Cloud9 plus 2.5. It's an interesting debate if I'd rather have that or their plus 1.5 number at a increased price, considering where I think FaZe are in hardpoint, but yeah, mostly a stay away for me, but I don't know. This one just feels a little weird. Like Cloud9 might be scrappier than we think. And I don't know. We're starting to get to that point in the season where FaZe might try some interesting map vetoes to get a feel for maps they haven't been great on this year. And I don't know, Cloud9 are maybe a soft enough opponent to let those vetoes get a little weird. I don't know. We'll see how this one plays out, but My early hunch says that this might be at least a game 4, if not a game 5. Yeah, we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know. I'm not sure if I want. The model says -2.5. I don't know if I want to do that. I think I might leave that alone. But yeah, sometimes just because the model says something doesn't mean you just go ahead with it anyway. Next game on to Saturday, match one. We've got Miami versus Cloud9. Miami -175 on the money line. Cloud9 +125. Miami -1.5 +125. Cloud9 +1.5 -175. Miami -188 in the on the hard point, -138 in the search, and then plus 100, basically even in the control. Technically, Cloud9 is favored in the control, -138. My model is all over Miami here. My model loves Miami in the money line, and the -1.5 in map one, and map two, and map three. And your model is pretty ambivalent. It doesn't really take much of a side here, but I really do like Miami -1.5. I think they can get the job done. I think they're very strong in a hard point. This is one of the first times that my model doesn't like Cloud9 in a hard point. I think Miami's strong enough in hard point they can get the job done. What's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, stay away for me, absolutely. This feels like it's priced about, like, we know Miami are a better team than Cloud9. Last week's results don't, to me, stand out as anything to make big changes on for these teams. I think Miami's still quite a bit better. I think a lot of their success is, coming through in hardpoint. And it's interesting because if you look at their like season record in hardpoint, they're sub 500, but they have played so many hardpoints against the elite hardpoint teams that my model adjusts for that strength of schedule. So Miami, even though they look like maybe 7th, 8th best record-wise in hardpoint, the fact that they've played so many good teams and they've been competitive against those bumps them up to slightly above league average, where Cloud9, right, they play the phases and the thieves of the world, and those hard points tend not to go their way. Yeah, I think Miami can probably lean on their hard point strength in this match. They could win too. I could absolutely see that. I think it's more likely these teams probably split, but if I had to pick a team to win two, it would have to be Miami. Miami, I think my numbers are just a little low in search and destroy for them. Their search is red hot right now, and their control is coming along okay. So yeah, I think if I had to choose a side, I would take Miami. -1.5, I guess, seems all right. But yeah, this one is probably a stay away for me. Just kick back, watch this, and see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think so, but I'm definitely taking Miami here, though. That's fair, though. This one, here we go. Minnesota versus LAG. Minnesota -250 on the money line. LAG +175. Minnesota -1.5 +100. LAG +1.5 -138. Minnesota -188 in the hard point, -188 in the search, and -138 in the control. Yeah, I maybe LAG +1.5. I don't know. That's what my model likes. My model is, I think, just saying no one should be favored in this game. It's just be like, I basically got everybody at 50-50 here. This is like a classic. No one is beating anybody by a mind. No one is covering any spread against anyone. That's the official position of my model in this game. What do you think here? Does your model agree with my model, or are you just gonna leave this one alone?
Yeah, this one's, again, a stay away from me. I feel like a lot of these prices are really getting nailed down by the market, and they seem pretty efficient to me. So I'm curious to see if they change up a lot as we get to these matches on Saturday. But yeah, I don't know. For the most part, again, Rocker haven't had a lot of wins lately, but they've been to so many Game 5 Round 11s, and a lot of them haven't gone their way, where, if we just assume they win half of those, they look like a kind of league average team, a little below that. LAG haven't done much lately. Now, their series against Miami was a surprise, I would say. Like, winning both hard points against Miami is pretty impressive, even if the first one was very close. It's just that it never all comes together for them. Like, their searches were horrible, and they lost the control as well. So, I don't know. If you're LAG, at least you fought like heck to even force the Game 5. But yeah, I trust Rocker a lot more, even with their skid that they've been on. -250 feels about right. The -1.5 at even money feels about right. As you can see from my model, like, I have Rocker in kind of the 60-40 range for map 1, map 2, and map 3. To me, again, that feels about right. Yeah, this one's a stay away rocker. If you want to make champs, you got to have this one. But LAG, if you want to ruin someone's day, then winning this would definitely do that. Yeah, interested to see how it plays out. And hopefully, just for the sake of champs being a fun race, rocker get this win, because I don't want champs to just be locked up by next week. We'll see how it shakes out. But yeah, I do trust rocker a little bit more, but these prices are perfectly in line for that.
I will say counterpoint, though. How many times in the NFL season, especially towards the end, especially on some random Thursday night game, do we not see a team that needs to win this game to stay in the playoff hunt, and then they lose to a 3-10 team? How many times? It's so often.
True.
We see that
but
so
you could
many
argue
times.
that was rocker versus Vegas a week ago. It was
Yeah.
all right, this one should be a rocker win, and then they just collapse in that round 11. So yeah, maybe the vibes are just horrible in the Minnesota camp right now, and taking LAG in this spot wouldn't be a bad idea. I get that argument just as equally as I get the rocker argument of just they're a better team. Yeah, however you want to go with this, but I don't know if a lot of people are going to be playing this match anyway. Yeah.
We'll have to see. I think it might be worth a play on. There might be a play on LAG here. I think we'll see though. I haven't decided yet. This is gonna be a game time decision for sure. Saturday match 3: Thieves versus Falcons. Thieves a minus 4,000 favorite on the money line. Vegas plus 950. Thieves minus 2.5, minus 163. Vegas plus 2.5, plus 120. Thieves minus 600 on the money line in the hard point. Minus 400 in the search, and minus 2,000 in the control. Yeah, I got nothing. My model kind of likes the minus 2.5, but this is a get-right spot for Thieves. They can come in and just destroy them. I just want to watch this. This is going to be angry Thieves, although they don't really have that much to be angry about because they just won the major. They're just kind of, we shouldn't have gone 0-2 last week. But whatever. Again, remember when I said it's funny that, and my model has it, and your model has a very similar number. I have 0.1 more wins for Vegas. You have 0.18 more wins, so you're not giving them that much more credit than me. This is one of the reasons why they're only at 0.1 or 0.18 wins. We're no, they're not winning. They're not beating Thieves. Do you see anything here or not?
Not really. I did adjust my data just to see what the numbers would be if you took out old Vegas Falcons and you just looked at what they've done since the Major 3 qualifiers. And the numbers come out almost the same. They're a little, Vegas is a little better in hardpoint, but much worse in search and control since they've made that lineup move, so it all evens out in that sense. But yeah, my current model, my model that I use all the time, has Thieves way up at the 98% chance to win or whatever it is. If I adjust it to just look at, 98% to win, if I just look at Vegas Falcons for the last month, LA Thieves go down to about a 95% chance to win. Yeah, that's where we're at. Thieves should be very big favorites. Map 3 is almost automatic, if not automatic win. If I squint my eyes, I guess I could see Falcons winning a Map 1 or a Map 2, but it's tough to get there. I think, yeah, you're right about Thieves will just bounce back. Should take care of business pretty easily. But yeah, I don't know, minus 2.5 at minus 163 isn't that appealing either. I think just let this one play out. Expect a Thieves 3-0. If it's not, good for Falcons for getting on the board. But yeah, this is a pretty easy, probably a speedy match on Saturday night. Yeah, Thieves all the way here.
Yeah. Moving on, Saturday match 4, Carolina versus Optic. Carolina plus 110 on the money line, Optic minus 150. Optic minus 1.5 plus 137. Carolina plus 1.5 minus 188. Optic minus 163 in the hard point, minus 110 in the search, and then minus 500 in the control. My model's kind of ambivalent on this one. It likes Carolina in the hard point, but it doesn't like them in the search, and it really doesn't like them in the control. It has Optic as slight. It likes Optic moneyline just a little bit, but it likes It doesn't really like Texas minus 1.5 or Carolina plus 1.5. But it does like Carolina in the hard point. So I think this one's kind of a bit of a stay away for me. I think. Do you see any value here that you like? Are you going to go in on Optic on this one, or are you going to wait and see what we see on Friday for them?
Yeah, I think I prefer Ravens here. Not super strongly, but again, the right news that he is in the lineup has shifted these odds. Like Ravens were even money to win, now they're plus 110. It's a small move, but still the market telling us that we think Mercules is going to help. But Ravens, they only played, or no, they did play twice last week. They lost to Toronto, but beat Boston 3-0. So that was a pretty impressive win. I don't want to overrate it because I know I love Boston. If you come out and beat Boston 3-0, that means you took a hard point, even though it was close. You took the hard point, and the search and control finally looked like old Ravens, like good. So that was a delight to see if you're a Ravens fan. Yeah, the series against Toronto did not go their way. They got a search win, though, round 11, but it's not quite there in hardpoint yet, maybe. But I don't know. I view this one the same as I view Optic versus Boston earlier in the weekend. Feels very coin flippy. So I'll just take the team that's plus 110 to win. Again, with roster changes, the talk a lot is that the teams that go through those roster changes maybe take a deep or like a worse position in search and destroy. And I could see that being the case. And if Carolina's search and destroy is improving a little, then I think they can definitely bank on that. My model says Carolina map 2 looks like value. Map 1 and map 3 look solid as well. Yeah, I don't know. Another tough one to call for me, so I'll just side with the slight underdog in this one.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm probably gonna punt on this until we see the results from Optics earlier game and see if they beat Boston. Then maybe I'll consider it, but maybe if they don't, then we might consider backup play on Carolina. I'll have to see what my model says for this after Friday. Sunday, match number 1. Speaking of Boston versus Surge, Surge minus 250 on the money line, Boston plus 175. Surge minus 1.5, minus 110. Boston plus 1.5, minus 125. Surge minus 250 in the hard point, minus 138 in the search, and then minus 125 in the control. My model really likes Vancouver here. It likes the minus 1.5 a little less in terms of hard point, but it thinks Vancouver should be large favorites in the search, and maybe Boston has some value in the control, but again, it's that combination of like heavy favorites in hard point, heavy favorites in search. That's a very clear path to 1-2-4. Even if you're not as strong in control, you can very easily get that 1-2-4 punch, and I think and then if not, then it goes to a 5, and that's why you see the money line streaking upwards of up to 8 into the 80s there. Do you agree, do you see some value on Boston here, or are you just gonna pass on this one?
Yeah, this one's a pass for me. I wish I had a stance because I think this could be a really fun series, but both of these teams disappointed last weekend, so my positions on them haven't really changed much. And again, like Surge had 2 losses to Boston's 1, but Surge's loss against FaZe was, dare I say, an impressive loss, but they got both hard points. If they can win something else, they have a very nice win on the board. And then, yeah, Boston losing to Carolina is not great. And then Vancouver losing to Optic. Both of those were sweeps, back-to-back series on Saturday. But I think both teams can bounce back. I do have more faith in Surge, so I get why they're a relatively big favorite in this spot. Yeah, but I think this is more just a learning experience for me. Like, I really just want to see which team rebounds. If Boston can be competitive and control again, or if that's starting to fall off. Can Surge keep the momentum in hardpoint despite the losses recently? So maybe it just comes down to search and destroy like a lot of these series go. I think if I had to choose a side, I would take Boston. That's what I do. I always take Boston. But in terms of like spreads and stuff, like Boston plus 1.5 at minus 125, I think I'd rather have that than Vancouver minus 1.5 at minus 110. So it's very close for me. I don't think these prices will shift a ton as we approach this game on Sunday, but yeah, I think this is definitely going to be a fun one to watch and a good way to kick off the day on Sunday. Yeah, see how it shakes out, and hopefully Boston can come through. Because this is big for it used to be the race to 1580, but the CDL points game, because I've got Boston, that's my one differentiator, and you've got Surge, so this could be a nice little 10-point swing for that.
Yeah. Although I will say that like Miami is looking really good right now, so that's really helping, I think. Miami and Toronto. I don't have Toronto. I do have Thieves and FaZe though, so it's going to be very close. I think it's going to, at the end of the day, it's going to be a very close race there at the end, but we'll have to see. But yeah, I honestly I don't know who's going to win. I think it's going to come down. It's literally going to come down to the final. It's going to come down to 2 or 3 matches 2 weekends from now in the major. That's what this is going to come down to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be like, oh, this team won this game. It's, oh, Surge beat Heretics, so Robert wins, or the opposite, right? It's, oh, they beat them, so like that's what the line is going to be. So it's going to be close. I'm actually really excited for that. It's going to be, we're going to see who wins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Next up, Sunday, LEG versus FaZe minus 1400 on the money line. LEG plus 650, FaZe minus 2.5 plus 100. LEG plus 250 minus 138. FaZe minus 275 in the hard point, minus 450 in the search, and minus 700 in the control. I think my model has some value on the minus 2.5. I think it's interesting. The thing is with FaZe, they were a bit weaker in Major 3, but we can very clearly see they were very strong there against Vancouver, very strong against Thieves. Is this that, did FaZe just have a really good weekend and Surge and Thieves didn't have a good weekend? Or was it that Thieves and Surge didn't have a good weekend, but like now we're at end of season phase? Because they usually do have this point in the season where they fade out a bit, they maybe take a step back for a bit, but then they always come on towards the end. They generally, I think there's been a couple exceptions to that, they've always been strong near the end. They always just figure out the title and get ready for champs. Is that what we're seeing here? Is this now just phase, like final form phase? Is that what we're doing here? Or is this, because if this is final form phase, where they're just buzzsawing people, then the minus 2.5 at plus 100 is an amazing value. And you could even chalk up you could probably look at a hard point spread there for the hard point and be like, whatever that spread is, there's probably value on that spread. Because if that's how strong phase is going to be right now, there's a very strong argument that you just go with phase, take the minus 2.5, take a couple of spreads here that you like, maybe the hard point and the search spread, and just call it a day.
Yeah. To me, like I don't love either side here, but FaZe minus 2.5 doesn't seem that bad considering what they just looked like a week ago. To your question about was it more FaZe impressing or Surge and Thieves falling flat, I think it's more FaZe. I think it's more indicative of, yeah, they have rebounded all right from what they did at Major 3 and the Major 3 qualifiers. Now, I still have some questions about their hard point, and that is the game where it's like, I could see LAG coming out and winning map 1, even though that sounds crazy. Like, you look at the numbers, that seems to be where they got a shot. But, I don't know, it's tricky, right? Like, FaZe, I don't know, here, I'll put it like this. So, Thieves versus Vegas, that is a game that's happening Saturday, this weekend. Thieves is minus 4,000 to win, Vegas plus 950. Like, why? And minus 4,000 to minus 1,400 is not as big of a drop as it sounds, but it is a little bit different. Why wouldn't this match, LAG versus Atlanta, be the same prices as Thieves Vegas? To me, those are very comparable teams. Like, FaZe and Thieves are close, LAG and Vegas are close, so I don't know. The pricing just seems off for this. I wouldn't be surprised to see FaZe become maybe a minus 110, minus 120 to sweep in this spot. Yeah, I slightly prefer FaZe. I don't love it, but if they can get through map 1, I feel really good about them holding serve and search and destroy, and they are, a far superior control team. Yeah, I think FaZe are nothing here, but again, we could be at the point in the season where FaZe might want to try some maps that they're not typically good on, or at least they're more league average than good. So if we get some of that funkiness, maybe LAG can rip off a map, or maybe even 2 if things break their way with the vetoes. Yeah, fully expect a FaZe win here. 3-0 probably feels likely at this point. If it's not a 3-0, it's a 3-1 at the very least.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sunday, match 3, Toronto versus Minnesota. Toronto minus 334 on the money line. Minnesota plus 240. Toronto minus 1.5, minus 138. Minnesota plus 1.5, plus 100. Toronto minus 200 in the money line. Minus 180, minus 200 in the hard point. Minus 188 in the search. And minus 225 in the control. And yeah, I like the Toronto minus 1.5 there. I like the money line a bit. Toronto, my model doesn't love Toronto in the hard point, likes Minnesota a little bit in the hard point, but not that much. And it loves Toronto in the search and in the control. I think the minus 1.5 is playable here. I'm not sure to what degree, but I think it is definitely possibly playable here. What do you have for this one?
Yeah, I have what the market has. We are very much in line, me and the market. Yeah, I don't know. The tricky thing with Ultra minus 1.5, I think, is that Rocker haven't fallen off that much in hard points. It's for them, it's a lot of search and destroys where they blow it, and control's been a little shaky. And we know Toronto are a good search and control team, and their hard point has really picked up. So yeah, these teams are obviously trending in completely opposite directions. So Toronto's prices are justified, I think. Like, if you had to pick one, who wins and what is the score, if you just had to pick one, I would probably say, yeah, Ultra 3-1 over Rocker. But again, does that happen enough to warrant the minus 138? I don't know. It could be another one of these Rocker games where it goes to the game 5 and who knows who comes out with the win because it's going to go to around 11. I don't know. I can talk my way into both sides here. It was a good weekend for Toronto, no doubt. 2-3-1 wins. They only dropped a search versus Carolina. That was around 11. And then a hard point against Cloud9 that was somewhat close. So, yeah, Toronto are looking real good now. I do expect them to win this. I just think the prices are just a bit too high for me to get on board with them. But if you like it, I totally get it. It would take a lot for me to take Rocker in any match for the rest of the year. They are just in another state of bad right now.
Models versus markets. Our picks here for the week. I've got Miami minus 1.5 versus Cloud9. I've got Toronto minus 1.5 versus Minnesota, and I've got Optic just straight up minus 175 versus Boston. What are your picks for this week?
Yeah, so my number one's going right up against your number 3. I've got Boston plus 125 versus Optic. I just think it's more of a coin flip. Same with the second pick there with Ravens. I expect Optic to win one of those. I don't know which one, but I think those other teams are competitive enough to take away a win from Optic. But we'll see. Mercules could be the truth, and Optic all of a sudden look like a top 4 team. But TBD on that. And then I'm also going with Miami in the other series against Vegas Falcons, and I'm going very aggressive, minus 2.5, that they get that done in a sweep. Falcons just, I don't know, like, good on them for getting that win against Vegas, but I think this series versus Heretics looks more like the Cloud9 series that Vegas played a week ago, where nothing was really that close, and I think Miami are a clear cut above Vegas, or a clear cut above Cloud9 at least. Yeah, we'll see if that comes through. It's a tougher one to get through because they got to be perfect, but I just love where Miami's at right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then the combined model plays for this week, we've got Miami money line minus 1.5 in map 1 versus Vegas. We've got Boston map 1 against Optic, and then we've got Cloud9 map 1 against, it's FaZe, right? Yeah, I think it's FaZe, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And then we've got Thieves money line minus 2.5 there against Vegas. And we've got Carolina map 1 versus
Optic.
Optic, yeah. And then Sunday we've got FaZe money line and map 2 versus LAG. Whatever juice you could squeeze out of the prime minus, I think it's the 1200 money line. Sure, yeah. Go for it. It's all good. We will be back next week with Major 4 Week 3, and that preview will be out by Thursday of next week. Other than that, have a good week, everybody, and we'll see you next week. See you, everybody.